Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport, and today was the Qatar Grand Prix, which I watched, and I've given it a couple of hours to think things over because this was a pretty crazy race, and I did not expect so much to happen here. When I think of the Qatar Grand Prix, I think of a featureless wasteland of a racetrack where overtaking is near impossible, and my expectation is for it to be a complete bore fest. It wasn't, but it wasn't really down to the track. There were several incidents in this one. Straight away at the start of the race, we had a few cars go off. Hulkenberg lost control at the first corner and took out an unlucky Ocon and Colapinto. Neither of them deserved to be taken out in such a way. Hulkenberg just lost control. This may possibly be the last appearance for Esteban Ocon with the Alpine team, the team he took his only Formula 1 win with, because as far as from what I've heard, Jack Doohan will be racing in that car in Abu Dhabi, which is interesting. When I heard it, I thought it just meant he was taking over the Esteban Ocon's car for free practice, but apparently Jack Doohan is doing the race, so that's going to be interesting. And Esteban Ocon will be back in 2025 as he is joining rivals Haas, which is a bit of a sideways move for him. I don't think you're going to see better performances with Haas than you saw at Alpine, but I mean, it keeps him on the grid. As for Colapinto, still no plans for him in 2025. He has been unlucky in the last few races. Yes, he's made mistakes and had a couple of bad accidents, but this was totally not his fault. And I thought he did well when qualifying. He didn't make it through Q1, but I thought that pace was there. He could have done better. It was an unlucky weekend for him. Later in the race, there was penalties everywhere for pretty much everything. Lando Norris, obviously the big one, because he got a 10-second stop and go for not slowing down under double yellows. Massive penalty, dropped him from second to out of the points, and he managed to climb his way back up to 10th or 9th, which was a good drive from him from the end, but obviously not ideal for a team fighting for the Constructors' Championship. McLaren did lose ground to Ferrari here. They were very lucky that Gasly held off Sainz, to be honest, because it's less than 20 points, so it is all to play for in Abu Dhabi. That will be the main interest of that race, sadly. The fight for second in the championship between Leclerc and Norris is on. Leclerc is not too far behind, mostly because Norris only scored a point here. So that's the other exciting thing, really. McLaren and Ferrari is the big deal now. Verstappen, obviously untouchable, but Red Bull, they can win the Constructors, I think. They might be out of it as well now, but it was unlikely anyway. So, and Mercedes too far away to catch anyone. So it's all about Ferrari versus McLaren. Lando Norris versus Charles Leclerc. I don't know if Sainz and Piastri can change places in the championship, but maybe they can. So that might be worth keeping an eye on as well. I think Sainz would probably have to win. But yeah, so Ferrari and McLaren fighting, that is going to be Abu Dhabi. Mercedes had a lot of issues here. George Russell was very quick, but the car just seemed lacking in the actual race. Fourth place isn't bad though. It's good enough points at the end of the year. He's pulled away from Lewis Hamilton, who had an absolutely dreadful race. A puncture on the debris after the safety car didn't come out to clear the wing mirror off the track, which was absurd. But even after that, he had a 5-second penalty for a jump start and a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, which were both pretty much slam dunk penalties. You can defend him all you want. He's made a lot of mistakes this year. Those are rookie mistakes. It's pretty poor from a 7-time world champion. And this may be his worst race performance ever. I can't think of a time when he's looked more amateurish than this. There was that race where he drove into the pit lane when the red light was on. And obviously, I think it was in 2008, Canada, where he drove into the back of Raikkonen, who stopped for the red light at the end of the pit lane. But this race there was just so many things going wrong. He lacked pace anyway. He couldn't get past Sergio Perez. And he dropped down to the back of the field. And it was honestly one of the worst performances from him. And he moaned the whole time as well, unsurprisingly. There was a lot of swearing today. I don't know if this was a thing I've missed, and they said somewhere they were going to stick it to the FIA by swearing constantly, but there was a lot of swearing. I'd be interested to see what the world record for swearing on a TV broadcast is, because this must have been close. Obviously, they bleep it all out, but I'd love to hear the uncut version one day. They should put the uncut version on YouTube, because it would be a brilliant watch. I don't think they will, because it's probably a bit too crass for their corporate image, but I would love to listen to it. Or I'd love to have someone remix it into like a dance track. I think that'd be brilliant. Other controversies in this one. Hülkenberg spun. He wasn't having a great race anyway, and obviously that was the second time he'd lost control of the car, which is a bit embarrassing for him. And obviously it hurts his fight for championship points. Haas versus RB versus Alpine is the other big fight for the year, to see who has the best team's place, the extra money that comes with it, all the glory that comes with it as well. Guan Yu Zhou scoring points for Sauber, the first time they've scored points since Qatar last year. It's been over a year since they scored points. 8th place by Zhou. He didn't put a foot wrong. He was relatively quick. Fantastic drive from him. And I honestly, out of everyone, I think he deserves a seat in 2025. And he hasn't got one. But it sounds like he's going to Ferrari as a reserve driver. That's a great role for him. Obviously, Robert Schwartzman's their current reserve driver, is going to IndyCar. But I would love to see Guan Yu Zhou back on the grid, because I think he's a great driver who's been given bad equipment. And he deserves a lot better. Verstappen winning again, not really surprising. I honestly think he's just turned a corner this year. I honestly wonder if the middle of this year was just Red Bull sandbagging the car because they didn't want the FIA to change regulations to hurt them, which will probably happen anyway, but it's honestly been strange that at the start of the year they won the first 7 of 10 races. Didn't win throughout the middle of the year, and now they've won 2 in the last 3. That's a conspiracy theory for you, but I don't think it's true. But it's a sort of game I can imagine being played in Formula 1 these days, sadly. Sergio Perez, again, off the pace. He was at least in the top 8, and he did hold off Hamilton for a while, but he looked like he had a retirement for an issue rather than just a mistake, which is a step in the right direction for him. But I think Abu Dhabi will be announced to be his last race in Formula 1. I don't think he'll come back. It's a sad end to his career, because obviously we've had some amazing times with Sergio Perez. This is not how I think a lot of Formula 1 fans want to see him go, but I do think this is the end. And this was another bad race for him. He's stuck in 8th. He's not going to catch Hamilton. He's not going to lose 8th place to Fernando Alonso behind him. He's pretty much done for the year. Red Bull would really need him to finish 2nd at least. If he could win and take fastest lap, that would be a great result to go out on. But I don't see it happening, and because of that, I think Perez and Red Bull will be where they are now, 3rd in the Constructors, Perez 8th in the Championship. Obviously, Max is going to be 1st. So their year's pretty much done. They don't really need to turn up to Abu Dhabi if they didn't want to, but I'm sure they will. But for Perez, this has really and truly been an awful year. He has been completely off the pace, embarrassed. Constantly, it's been talked about him leaving and getting kicked out of the team at pretty much every race this year. There's been talk of him being replaced, which he's got through the year. It hasn't happened, but performances haven't improved. So I don't see him lasting any longer. This surely must be it for him. Who will replace him? Honestly, I think Yuki Tsunoda, who was doing a good job in this race. He did start to drop back before the pit stops, and then they put him on the softs after the safety car, and it just didn't work. He dropped right back. But honestly, I think Yuki has really turned a corner this year. He's been great in some races, decent everywhere else. He's made a few mistakes here and there, but I think if he was in the Red Bull, he would be doing better than Perez is. And that's the most important thing. Even if it was for a season or 2, whilst you give Liam Lawson a couple more years to get used to Formula 1, it's worth sticking Tsunoda in that Red Bull. And I'm sure they won't. All this talk about Franco Colapinto getting that drive, I think that's going to go under the bus now that he's crashed quite a few times in the recent races, even if it's not his fault. And honestly, I think Liam Lawson's probably the favourite, but if Liam Lawson gets promoted and Yuki Tsunoda doesn't, that's a slap in the face for Yuki Tsunoda, and he may not want to stay with RB. He may go the way of Pierre Gasly, which would be a shame because I think, honestly, he could do well in that top car. As for everyone else, Charles Leclerc, decent in this race. Sainz was decent, but he got really hurt by the puncture, and then he couldn't get past Gasly at the end. Another brilliant drive from Gasly, absolutely fantastic to get 5th place. Really elevating Alpine far beyond where they should be. Fernando Alonso did a great job. Lance Stroll was pretty useless in this, as he always is. Honestly, one of the worst drivers on the grid, if not the worst driver on the grid, now that Logan Sargent's gone. Even then, they're probably tied as the worst driver. But Lance Stroll is god-awful. I think he's 11th in the championship, and I don't think he's going to do any better or worse. And he's fortunate he's in 11th, because he hasn't scored points in ages. Fernando Alonso is keeping that team in 5th in the Constructors. Even he seemed pretty angry with them, with the performance of his car. So I don't know if that bodes well for the future for him. But, I mean, we'll see what they're like in a couple of years' time. That's going to be, with Adrian Newey joining the team, that's going to be a big changing point for them, in theory. As Magnussen, it was great seeing him battle in this race. I think he did score a point or two, which is a pretty good drive from him. Otherwise, I think everyone else was pretty much where you would expect him to be. Bottas was unlucky not to score points. Albon had issues, but it was a pretty good drive from the Williams driver. He was in the top 10 for a while. But again, I think the soft tyres just didn't work out for him. Overall, this was a completely mental race with lots of stuff happening, but I do hate the Losail track. It's a featureless. I can't honestly... I watched it, an hour or two ago? I can't remember a single feature of that track. It has one overtaking spot, which is the first corner. That's it. And only that is only an overtaking spot because of DRS. Otherwise, there would be no overtaking. It's fine as a sports car track. It's nothing special, but it's pretty much designed to be a sports car track with 40 to 50 cars going around, not 20 Formula 1 cars. And there were plenty of stewarding mistakes. There was a lot of penalties in this one, which you may or may not have different opinions on. But the incident with the wing mirror in the middle of the straight, they didn't pick it up. I think Bottas ran over it, and that led to Sainz and Hamilton getting punctures. Hamilton's race was ruined anyway by being stuck behind Perez and then getting a couple of penalties and just not really having any pace in the car. But Sainz was on for a decent enough result, which, okay, he probably only dropped behind Gasly. But, I mean, you don't know what would have happened if he hadn't done that. But yeah, I honestly, I'd love to see the Qatar Grand Prix kicked off the calendar just for being shit. It's not going to be because they have a lot of money. And that's going to keep it on the calendar for as long as they keep paying it. But it's honestly, it's an awful track. One of the worst on the calendar. This was quite an interesting race, but not for the right reasons. It was a messy Grand Prix. We only have one left for 2024, which is next weekend, and of course it is the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which I believe is cursed for Lewis Hamilton, but that will be his final race for Mercedes if he decides to turn up. It looks like Esteban Ocon's had his final race for Alpine, but we do get the debut of Jack Doohan by the sounds of it, which will be interesting. I wonder if Oliver Behrman's going to get the drive ahead of Kevin Magnussen. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But I think if Alpine do it, maybe Haas will as well. But then, maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This was a bit messy because I am very tired. And it has been a long evening. I did watch the F2 and the F1 Academy races that actually went ahead. F2 was pretty exciting, actually. There's quite a lot going on there. But F1 Academy, the second race got cancelled because one of the support races had damaged the barrier. Which is a shame, but then Abby Pulling has won that championship handily anyway. Formula 2 is very close between Bortoletto and Hajar. And I think Paul Aron, now that he's taken his first win, can actually still win the championship as well. So between those three, Andrea Antonelli had an absolutely horrendous weekend. He crashed twice. I think he only spun in the first one, but he definitely did not have a good race. He didn't score any points anyway. So, I mean, that's interesting for 2025. There'll be more content next week. There's going to be a lot of Formula E content because Formula E is getting going again for 2025. Although it starts in 2024, which is just really annoying. Other than that, there isn't a lot else on. Next week, Formula 1, Formula 2, F1 Academy all finish, as does Super GT. And a week after that, I think Stock Car Brazil finishes. And then, of course, in January, we look forward to Formula Regional Oceania, Formula Regional Middle East, Daytona 24-hour race, Monte Carlo Rally. The Race of Champions is around that time. NASCAR starts in February. We don't get a long break for motorsport these days. It honestly finishes halfway through December and starts again like mid-January. So there'll be content throughout the entire time, so don't worry about that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.